Hello, I am going to share my screen and just share a little bit about my field experience. I was in a classroom with Ben Winkles, who is a 10th grade work seminar teacher at St. Peter High School. And this experience was in fall of 2021, which was this past fall. Service learning is a reciprocal relationship that merges both field experience and sustainable community service to offer learning opportunities that link academics to the service. So both the college student and the community partners benefit. And I feel this really rung true with my experience. I most definitely benefited, and I could really tell that some of the students that I was working with got a lot out of having me in the classroom. And I know that my teacher host was very appreciative of my work in the classroom. And so I think that really rings true to this definition. And one thing that's really important to note with service learning project is that it allows for college students to gain exposure to people with different backgrounds and also gives students a chance to have that same benefit. And maybe if a college student comes in and they had never worked with a college student or don't know anyone who's in college or around that age, maybe they would get a lot out of having that sort of mentor and student come into the classroom as a helper. And for the students' perspective, so in my perspective, there were definitely students in my classroom who identified with different racial backgrounds or were LGBTQ. And so it just increased my exposure to high school students. And one anecdote that I want to share is from my personal experience. And that was one day my host teacher wasn't able to be there, and I was able to go into the classroom and be the substitute, because if I was not there and they didn't have a sub to offer, which they didn't, the students would just be doing work time in the commons. And being able to be put in that position where I can help the students and be the only teacher there was really definitely a learning experience. I learned a lot about working in work seminar and work safety just because that was the content of the class. But I also really took out that small groups are effective. About halfway through my experience there, I recommended that my teacher use small groups to get students to talk a little bit more to each other before being called on. And I found that that was really effective. And he found the same thing. And he actually thanked me for giving him that suggestion. I also realized how much preparation really goes into being a teacher. On my first day, I arrived half an hour early before the school day started and was able to help my host teacher prepare and introduce myself a little. And I realized how much work actually goes into being a teacher and creating a lesson, and it's not just winging it. There's actually a lot of effort and content and thought that needs to be put in place before it going into the students' minds. So initially, I had a few conceptions about teaching, which I currently do not believe after this experience. The first one was that teachers need to run a tight ship classroom, and I definitely think that's a myth. My teacher made sure that every day there were breaks for students to talk amongst each other and not focus on learning, so that when they were asked to come back as a class, that they were able to reconnect and refocus. And it was just kind of a reset for the students. And one time I know we bonded because we watched a video of a building that was being demolated. And it was just, I could tell from the students that it was a good experience for them to not have to sit and watch a video about working or work seminar or information, but it was more bonding moment. And then my other misconception for teachers was that if they hand you a worksheet, they're just being lazy, which far from true. I think that it's really important to make students think for themselves a little bit, and being handed a worksheet to compile one's thoughts was actually really helpful for a lot of students in shaping their own perspectives. And I think that really put into place how busy work can be used effectively. So my opinion on what the role of educators are and what the implications for me being a teacher, or just educators in general, is the importance of getting to know students as individuals. And that's really important because they're not just a bunch of students who are sitting in a classroom, but they are actual people, and being able to treat them like such is really important. And I noticed myself on the first couple of days just, oh, it's a bunch of 10th graders. But by the end, I really had connected and made those connections with everyone. Another important thing is to create well-rounded minds. And that's not just with a well-rounded curriculum, but it's also about implementing different formats of learning and teaching. So maybe one day they make a presentation and present in groups, or another day they write a paper, or fill in a worksheet, or even watch a video. And there's so many different ways to cater to the mind. And I think that the mind can be stretched by having, pardon me, I have email pop up. I apologize for that. It just does that sometimes. And I think it's just really important to stretch the mind to pay attention to all the ways it can learn. And the last role is to inspire students to think for themselves. I kind of mentioned this with the worksheet aspect, but I think prompting students to think is really important as an educator. So this whole experience really reaffirmed my desire to become a teacher, but it also made me think about all the other subjects that can be taught. And maybe it's not necessarily a work seminar class, but maybe it's a creative writing class or a poetry class, and not necessarily an English class. I know that my teacher who I was hosting was originally a science teacher, but he just started this work seminar class, and it was really cool to hear his experience with being a teacher of a classroom that wasn't just core curriculum. And that also gave him a lot of flexibility with building the curriculum. And then I noticed myself just really loving to connect with the students as individuals. And I loved getting up. Well, I didn't necessarily love getting up in the morning, but the thought that they were there and they were excited to see me and they were ready for me to be a part of their classroom is really important. And that got me out of bed in the morning. So thank you for watching my presentation and listening to my opinions and reflections on my field experience. Hope you have a good day.